the real issue, I think, is what we've noticed over time is that the condition of some of our car parks have been deteriorating, and they've really reached a point now where intervention is required. If we don't invest in some of our car parks, quite frankly, there is a real risk that they'll have to be closed. And you know, that's not over-egging it. It's coming to the state where some of them are really dangerous, and the council has had 4 compensation claims made against it recently, and that's resulted in £24,000 worth of compensation being handed out to people, and they're simply not costs that we can continue to sustain. Obviously, this isn't a decision we take lightly. We have looked carefully at the sites that we're proposing for parking charges. All of them are not ones that I think it can be said support businesses. They're predominantly parking areas that serve recreation grounds. So there's no real knock-on effects here for businesses, and that's, I think, something we've been clear to look at as we emerge from COVID. We don't want to burden businesses or our high streets any more than we have to. The sites we're looking at are listed at 2.6. I'm sure that officers have had lots of discussions with users, and there are things we can do to try and minimise the impact on users, and particularly in relation to South Ockenden Recreation Ground, where we're looking at permits. I believe there's an area of the recreation ground which doesn't form part of the car park area, but could potentially be given over to users, so they could use that exclusively. And having looked at what we can do to try and help the users even more, one of the things that we'll propose tonight is that we limit the hours or the days when the terrace apply. So instead of being 24/7, we're looking at Monday to Friday, 8 o'clock till 4 p.m. So I hope Mr. Cansdale will see that we are doing all we can to try and accommodate users, but we're open to further discussion. In terms of the income this will produce, that money is ring-fenced for parking services, so the intention is to use the funds that these additional pay and display sites will generate to improve the car parks across the borough, and the remedial work to the proposed pay and display sites would take place before the charges are imposed. So there would be an improvement in the condition of those car parks before we ask people to start paying to use them. It's really difficult, I think, to try and get an idea of the income this will generate. The car parks are currently completely unrestricted. They're not monitored, so we have no clear data in terms of how many people park there throughout the day, but it's estimated that it will produce about £160,000 worth of income for the council. And as I say, that's ring-fence money that goes back into parking services. We can improve our car parks and make them fit for purpose. I think it should be remembered as a pertinent point, the council has to pay business rates in our car park, and that income will help offset that. If we weren't to adopt the recommendations, the council still has to sustain that cost. We have to pay business rates on our car parks whether we charge for them or not. So that is a severe financial burden for the council, and this is one way of offsetting that. I just want to say something about the country park season ticket. That's one way. We're looking at particularly Langdon Hills Country Park. We know it's well used. We know that people cherish the country park. We want to make it easy for them to continue using that. And one of the things we're going to do is introduce a season ticket which will allow people to park there for a much reduced cost if they take up that offer. The report goes on to talk about AMPR. I know that's not a recommendation, but it's something that I'm very keen to see that we adopt. Some of these sites are remote, they're going to be hard to enforce. I think if we're going to maximise income, that's something I'm really keen to see us look at, and I will be said to officers that's my preferred enforcement method, and that's something we will explore further. I don't think there's much more to say. It's the report is quite clear, the sites are listed. I think I've explained why we're doing this, why we have to do it, and I've explained what we've done to try and minimise the impact on users, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Maynard. Just for openness and transparency, we've received at least 3 letters, one from the director of the Mardike Pavilions, one from the Brannon Groves FC chairman, and one from the General Secretary of the Bellis Cricket Club in relation to Ockenden Rec. So I am pleased to see that that's been listened to. I'm sure actually 2 local councils happen to be on cabinet. I'm sure they'll equally be happy But just for clear clarity, what you're saying, Councillor Maney, is for South Ockenden Rec, there won't be an open-ended time at which this is in place. It would be 8 till 4, was it?
Yeah, I mean, I think the times aren't set in stone. I think what I'm trying to say is if they don't work for the sports club, we'll relook at them. But the point is, we will look to limit the hours in which the charges are imposed to try and accommodate the users. I think one of the things I perhaps didn't, in terms of looking at the recreation ground, I think there's been some question about why this site, why have we picked this recreation site when we've got so many across the borough. The reason that we've looked at South Ockenden Recreation Ground is because some of the users, but also members of the public, have been complaining to the council for a long time about people using the car park to then go off onto the train into London, or more specifically, local office workers are parking there all day and they're using up car park space which users and members of the public can't occupy themselves. So in fact, it's abuse of the car park. So there is a legitimate reason for doing this. It's not only about income. We're trying to make sure that the parking provision here is protective of people who are using the recreation ground and not going off into London or using the office across the road. There's a legitimate reason for doing this, and actually it came about really because we were asked to do something, and there's no other real way of regulating usage of a public car park unless we look at doing something like this.
But obviously, with the weekend now not being part of the enforced times, again is going to make clear that those users of the rec are going to be able to use it, and the sports club that use it over the weekend, and they've got visiting teams and visiting players and so on, have got the ability to sort of park up. So are there any other questions in relation to this? I'll take Councillor Jeffries first.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Councillor May, and I welcome the change so that the sports club at the ground now will be able to use the car park, and the original idea of stopping commuters from using it to protect it is welcome. But I just wondered if you'd consider looking at the wider problem that is in Ockenden of commuters using all the residential areas to park, and whether there's some way that we could ask officers to look into a permit system so that residents can park in their roads and not have the problem of commuters filling up the roads with their cars while they go off to London.
Can I just